This is the Millennials Podcast.
Okay, I really want to talk about a brand new documentary that came out on Netflix. It's called The 13th. It's about the 13th Amendment. And basically it starts out with how slavery was an economic system. And because it was an economic system, it helped the economy thrive. And when the Civil War ended on May 9th, 1865, and the 13th Amendment was ratified on December 6th, 1865, that economy came crashing down. And there was a little bit of a dip in everyone's lifestyle. And as you can imagine, people do not like that. And because that happened, they began to look deeper into the 13th Amendment and found a loophole. You could call it a loophole. I think it, from a law and governmental perspective, can be justified. But the loophole that they could use was the criminal aspect of the 13th Amendment. So then they started to invent laws such as loitering and minor crimes where we could arrest people, and in turn, they are no longer free blacks. And that's where chain gangs came from. They said, you know what? Okay, we can't have slaves. Well, we're going to make them criminals. And now that they're criminals, we are going to use them for labor. So this is where chain gangs came from. And then, you know, the ones that are free and haven't loitered and haven't gotten in some type of trouble, they're going to be segregated because we don't want them touching our stuff. So that's how the very first, 15 minutes of the documentary starts? Maybe 20?
It dives right into it.
It dives right into it very quick. I kind of like that. And the 13th Amendment, in case everyone doesn't know what it is, states neither slavery nor involuntary servitude, except as a punishment for crime, whereof the party shall have been duly convicted, shall exist within the United States or any place subject to their jurisdiction. So they went from slavery to imprisonment, and for the blacks that were free, segregation, to the documentary goes on showing how drugs were introduced into ghettos and people were hooked and then all the more exploited and all the more imprisoned. And that brings us to mass incarceration today is where the documentary lands, right about in the middle. And that's what we'd like to talk about now because of everything that's happening right now in the news and with a bunch of stats. For example, the U.S. is 4.4 roughly % population of the entire world. So all the people that live in America are only 4.4% of all the people in the whole world. But we house 22% of the world's prison population.
Damn.
Yeah. If you are a black man in America, you have a 1 in 3 likelihood in your lifetime of imprisonment.
And if you're a white male, it's 1 in every 17 white males will go to prison.
And if you're black, it's 1 in every 3?
Yeah.
Yes.
Man, and I've already completed that statistic because I've been to jail.
Actually, my parole officer was the one who told me about that. Crisco Jenkins. Just going to give him a shout out.
I think you should.
Wait, are you being serious?
No.
I don't know. I don't know if you've been or not.
But Crisco Jenkins.
Hey, I subbed at a school where this kid's name was Notorious Honeywell.
Oh.
Okay.
Yeah,
There was a kid.
we had a student named Chaos.
His name was Chaos.
Oh,
spelled like chaos, not even like jacked up.
Was he Chaos?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, he lived up to it.
There was another kid, Michael J. Jackson.
Wow.
Yeah. So funny name, but anyways,
Rick Ross is my parole officer.
earlier I said that drugs were pushed into the ghettos, and a lot of people think that's BS. But Nixon's head advisor, I don't know how to say his last name. His name is John Ehrlichman, I think is how you say it. Yeah. This is a quote from him later in life. The Nixon campaign in 1968 and the Nixon White House after that had two enemies, the anti-war leftists, which were the hippies, and black people. You understand what I'm saying? We knew we couldn't make it legal to be either against the war or black, but by getting the public to associate the hippies with marijuana and blacks with heroin and criminalizing both heavily, we could disrupt the communities. We could arrest their leaders, raid their homes, break up their meetings, and vilify them night after night on the evening news. Did we know we were lying about the drugs? Of course we did. That is an insane thing to hear someone who had some kind of power and influence like that say, because it really means we ruined, literally to this day, millions. What they did at that time is still affecting communities and people who are in poverty, even outside of the races they were intending. Other races that weren't even intended to be a part of that, affected by this terrible thing they did that long ago to one particular race and one particular political party.
Yeah, historically speaking, the U.S. judicial system has always been the whole law and order and all that stuff. It's always been used as a weapon against the African American population from slavery onto today. If we look at mass incarceration is still happening.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. It's all leading up to today.
Privatized prisons finally are beginning to get closed down because of a law that was passed recently. I'm sorry, not a law that was passed, a policy that's been passed recently. The thing is that if we look at it historically, some people act like it's been so long or it's not affecting today. And the thing is that black men are 6% of the population, but they're 40% of the prison population, right? And every study shows that black and white people use drugs about the same way, like marijuana, at least marijuana. But you can go to jail for 20 years off marijuana possession. I live in Miami. I don't know many people who haven't tried drugs in Miami, but none of them are behind bars for 20 years. They're not a threat to my freedom or safety. And so, I mean, these are nonviolent crimes that people are going to jail for forever. These are fathers being removed from their kids. And so if every black male in your life has gone to jail or has been imprisoned or is in prison, what is that? You grow up with a distrust of the judicial system, distrust of police officers, because they are a direct threat to your livelihood every time you are in an encounter with one. You know, so I mean, I think people need to be empathetic, and yes, have black people. Yes, you will find an example where a black person has responded poorly to an arrest or to a confrontation with police, but understand that it's a systemic.
And so
issue.
has every other race at some point.
Correct, exactly. As soon as you generalize, you begin to get ignorant, and you begin to, in a way, dehumanize the struggle of the plight of certain peoples. You know, and it goes back to even like things like black on black crime, where a lot of white people will throw it in there as an excuse to say, oh, you protest police brutality, but you don't protest the violence in your own communities. First of all, that's ignorant, because when someone gets shot, you don't go out and protest. You don't protest violent citizen on citizen crime.
Yeah, are you gonna protest an individual?
Exactly. That makes no sense. One, two. There are things.
I mean, people do protest individuals. Trayvon Martin.
They didn't go to.
They didn't protest him, but they used him to protest something larger.
A broken system that has happened numerous times before.
But that's not black on black crime. That's not black on black crime.
Yeah, I know it's not.
Okay. Yeah. So what I'm saying.
I'm just saying people do use a single event to protest something much larger.
Yeah. I know. The reason they did that was because they felt it was racially motivated. If it's just like somebody robbing somebody for money and then they shoot them, nobody's gonna go protest that, because there's no point. That's violent street crime. That's gonna happen no matter what. Back to what I was saying, that's implying that there are no black initiatives to stop or to lower gang violence. There's a thing called ceasefire in Chicago. That they're trying to work with communities, trying to get the gang violence down under control, because it's the worst situation right now in America of any major city, you know. And so that's another thing that knocks down. And the third point on black crime is that black people kill black people at approximately between 90 to 93%. Right, it fluctuates every year, but between those numbers, it's usually low 90s. Right, white people kill white people at approximately 82 to 86%. Sorry, let's say 80 to 86%. It fluctuates, right? So, but it is normal for the person to kill you to most likely be the same race, because of how the U.S. is set up, and a lot of people live in proximity to people of the same race.
But to play devil's advocate here, I read that statistic too, but I guess you'd call it not unfair, but that is one of those statistics where you hear only percentage, and the 86% that's white on white is out of 2,000, and the 90-something% that's black on black is 6,000, which is a huge difference. So that means even though the ratio is the same, the amount is multiplied for the other race.
Are you sure that the number for white people is higher than the number for black people? Because black people are only 10% of the population.
Yeah. That's why it's astounding. Blacks committed 52% of homicides between 1980 and 2008. So of all the homicides in America, more than 50% were committed by blacks, despite composing only 13% of the population. Across the same time frame, whites committed 45% of homicides while composing 77% of the population, according to the Bureau of Justice and Statistics. Now, of course, that could be skewed because it's, a government agency that's been paid, but anyways.
Okay. Well, gang violence is normal in highly impoverished neighborhoods, and and there's a high concentration of that within the black community. The black community has been stripped of certain resources, depending on the area, all the way back to segregation. There was a reason why people lived in the same places as the people that look like them and of the same race. It was because of segregation, and those places naturally got worse schools, worse policing, worse everything, and even when the U.S. opened up and gained new territories, right? The only people that were allowed to claim whole new, like I'm talking about acres of land, were whites. So that's also an opportunity that black people missed out on. Just free land, in the West and when the U.S. gained more territories, all that stuff. When you look at the fact that there's a high concentration of systemic racism and poverty, yes. It's highly astounding and these need to be fixed, but that should not be used as a tool to undermine the fact that there's been systematic oppression.
Of course.
Yeah, instituted by the government to harm and keep black people down.
Agreed. And I think that, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that we know these numbers now, right? Why isn't there, you said earlier that people don't do that. Why isn't there a protest against black on black crime? How can you heal your community that's destroying itself by going outwards first and then inwards? Does that make sense?
But here's my thing. That the argument doesn't even make sense to me because it's
Which argument?
To say
Protesting.
there's black on black crime, so why aren't you protesting that? That's like saying, hey, you guys get to kill each other. Why can't I get to kill you?
No, it's saying if you want something. I think
Black Lives Matter, then why aren't you worried about the Black Lives?
Why aren't you focusing on that first and move it, like healing yourself inwardly and then outwardly getting the systems changed instead of? Does that make sense?
But
I'm playing devil's advocate.
I understand. But the problem with that is that, we don't call it white on white crime. We don't call it Latino on Latino crime. We don't call it Puerto Rican on Puerto Rican crime in Puerto Rico. We don't, because it's just normal. It's honestly just normal. If you live in proximity to people of your same race, they're more likely. If someone's gonna kill you, it's gonna be somebody within your own nearby area. If the numbers are similar, with white on white crime, and the thing is that we shouldn't have to wait until there's no gang violence within the black community to be treated fairly by the police. Yeah. In 2016, we shouldn't be asking to be treated fairly by the police.
Agreed.
That's ridiculous. And so the thing is that's used as a way to diminish all the things that black people are trying to push for within the justice system, within their own policing system, and all that stuff. There's a whole bunch of problems with that because black people have been complaining about how they've been treated by cops for decades. Publicly in the media. You go back to Martin, you go back to Fresh Prince, you go back to the Wayans brothers, any shows, the Jeffersons, they all make jokes about, they all reference back, even black comedians like Richard Pryor, they all make references to how black people are treated with the cops. And it was just like a subtly known thing, but now that we have the technology of these cameras, this whole violence
I was going to bring that up.
Yeah, this whole violence is not new. What's new is the technology and the mediums in which we can publish them. Yes.
Yeah. YouTube, the cop cams that are required in certain places.
Exactly. And the thing is that cops have way too much
cell phones.
Exactly. Power without accountability. Like Jason, a cop, there was a while in America where if a cop didn't like you, pulled you over, didn't like you, they could shoot you. Say that you went for your waistband and
they
you
still do that,
and you were acting. Yeah, I know they still do that.
But we have the capability of ruling that out.
Exactly. We can make it a lot harder for that to happen. But the thing is that there has to be.
Can we?
Yes,
there's been places where it's on camera and they still rule in favor of the.
But that's the only chance we have. It's the only chance we have.
We have a fighting chance.
We need accountability. Exactly. Because back then it was literally they literally needed a substantial amount of evidence against a police officer in order for anything to happen to that police officer.
Oh yeah, no, I'm with you.
To have a chance. Okay.
It sounds like you're trying to tell me something otherwise.
No. What I'm saying is that there's too much power. If I can get away with murder, that's too much power for any citizen to have, right? Even if it's a police officer, it's not. You cannot play God. you know? And so these police officers, there's a case where the police officer broke into a man's home without a warrant, went upstairs and shot him in his bathroom because he was unarmed and he went for his waistband, supposedly. But do you know what that is? And he got off. A police officer can trespass into your home and then literally shoot you and just say that you went for your waistband and that's it. That's all she wrote. And look at what happened with Fernando Castillo and this other gentleman, Alton Sterling. They're still not yet prosecuted. Like the investigations are still ongoing. That's been months ago. And this lady who killed Terrence Crutcher is already on trial. And so we look at all that. Like we need more accountability within our police department and in the media. The fact that we have all these cameras out is such a big help to like actually finally getting equality out of this situation.
Which I don't get how. Maybe somebody can give me some kind of insight into this. How certain police departments are so against body cameras. Does anyone have does anyone know why? I know that there's a reason. There has to be a reason other than they don't want to get caught. There has to be something else.
I know of only two scenarios. I don't remember. I feel like it was LA. I don't know where it was. Something bad happened race-wise with the whole cop shooting thing, and they confiscated all the cameras and said, we're not doing cameras anymore. And recently, those cops have been like, we want the cameras back because a lot of times it helps the cop.
That's what I would think. Like at my job, they're gonna put cameras in the classroom, and I'm so happy because there's been an incident in the past where a kid got hurt. I was the only person in the room with him, and thank God the parents trusted me and believed me. But had they not, I probably could have been on trial or something. So I'm so happy they're putting cameras on, and I would imagine as a police officer, for your own safety,
it's a pride
if you don't
issue.
have any intentions to do anything outside of your job.
Exactly. That goes to my second point. The first kind of person is you. The person that's like, no,
I'm going to do the right thing and I want something to prove it.
Yeah, and I want something to prove it. Exactly. Then there's the other person who knows they're slime and doing all kinds of bad stuff. That's why they don't want the camera, because they may have signed up to do something quote unquote noble. That's a whole argument in itself, but they're not, and they know it. And they know they're breaking the law, and they know they're going against all these things they're sworn into, and they don't want to deal with having to be caught for it. They want the power that they have, and they're not willing to give it up.
And the thing is that the political structure within our police departments is actually contributing to a lot of these things, because I don't know if you guys ever had a sales job where you had to have these crazy quotas, and you see people around you sometimes doing some fraudulent or some crooked stuff to make their numbers, right? And like there have been times where cops have come forward and said that honestly, like I've been encouraged to go after minorities. And there was a time where a subway cop was asked, why are you not stopping more Black and Latino males? Your numbers are down. There was actually a time this police officer had an interview with Joe Rogan, and he said that they moved him to a good neighborhood, right? The crime rate went down, but his arrests. And his superiors were trying to discipline him for that. And he had to go into bad neighborhoods and make more arrests. So even they were outside his post, he had to go out. That's
crazy.
Well, I'm pretty sure this wasn't a black thing or whatever, but as far as the whole quota thing, when I did get arrested, apparently the police officer that arrested me doesn't typically bring people in, because when I got brought into the station, the other police officers like, wow, we don't see you bringing people in usually or whatever, and they were like,
really pissed him off,
and they were like kind of making fun of the fact that he doesn't arrest that many people, and praising him for bringing someone in. So it kind of felt like there's this, if not a quota, then like a kind of like, I don't know, some kind of competition amongst them on who can bring the more people in.
Yeah, that's kind of, you'd think you wouldn't want to arrest anybody. It is a strange thing.
No, they were pretty much high-fiving each other.
That's what I mean. Like, it's kind of strange that
to celebrate, there was a criminal.
The thing is that
has to be a whole nother podcast, police stuff.
The thing is that it's a political structure, because when you get big busts or big arrests or high, it does help
your career.
Yeah, it does help with funding. With if your neighborhood is tough on crime, then it allows them to appeal to higher budgets and certain things like that. And it makes you look like you're doing a great job of policing your city.
Well, I mean, depending on who you're busting and what you're doing, you probably are doing a great job. If you're busting high profile people all the time, you're probably good at what you do. The question is, what is the quality of the criminal you're bringing? If you're always bringing in weed and loitering people, you're not trying to go after real problems. You're going after the one you can just grab outside of a quick stop or something, you know? Mm-hmm. You're talking about families earlier, how systemic racism has damaged the family. According to McDonald, a straight line can be drawn between family breakdown and youth violence. As economist Thomas Sowell points out, before the 1960s, most black children were raised in two-parent families. In 2013, over 72% of blacks were born out of wedlock. In Cook County, which Chicago belongs to, 79% of blacks were born to single mothers in 2003, while only 15% of whites were born to single mothers. Until that gap closes, the crime gap won't close either, writes McDonald. What do you think about that?
I think that when you look at the ghettos, you should, instead of thinking of those are bad people, those are criminals, you should think that the politicians have failed them. And the thing is that, yes, the family structure is a factor, but if I don't have good education and if I don't have opportunities, all I have is crime. You know, I have to survive, you know, and I have to do what I have to do. If selling drugs is going to allow me to pay my bills and live a better life and feed myself and my family, that's what a lot of people will do out of survival, out of self-preservation, you know? So when we look at it like that, because I grew up in a single parent home, right? And the reason why I think I didn't really have that issue was because I had decent socioeconomic opportunities. You know, I went to a decent public school, and I had family members that were college graduates, family members that were educated, and so like that push, they didn't make sense to me to go into crime. The thing is that people who have stable homes and their parents make a good amount of money don't really have an incentive to go and get into serious crime. I mean, maybe do drugs and that. That's one thing that's separate. But like, you know, if people have opportunities, when people talk about like the whole ghetto situation being tough on crime, you want to be tough on crime, honestly, give them opportunities. But make it easy for them to get good education and good socioeconomical advancements. Make it a realistic thing where they can actually go get ahead in life, and you will see the crime problem drop.
Okay, agreed. But because we don't have anyone on, everyone here is pretty much on the same page. So I'm going to voice a person that I know exists, okay? That's not how opportunities work. You create your own opportunities. It's 2016. You have a phone. You have internet. You have access to everything you could have ever wanted to know. So if you wanted to get educated, educate yourself. I mean, people from the 1960s didn't have the internet. All they had was maybe a library card, maybe. And if they did, and they wanted to get educated, and for some reason they couldn't have school, I'm sure there's plenty of people, including Martin Luther King, who spent hours and hours and hours and hours in a library teaching themselves because no one else would. What do you think about that now? Okay,
well, the way I would counteract that is the same thing as we said earlier about like the same analogy I used earlier with Chris Rock. He said that the baseball didn't have equality just because Jackie Robinson got there. Baseball began to have equality when bad baseball players that were black were able to be in the league, because the thing is that if I have to be significantly better than you to have the same opportunities as you, then it's not equality, right? If I have to overcome way more hurdles than you to have the same opportunities as you, that is not equality. So yes, there are success stories that come out of.
But we're not talking about equality though. We're talking about opportunities.
Okay,
equality and opportunity.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we're talking about how possible it is for those people to get those opportunities. The thing is that some people, it is literally not that hard. It's literally handed to them. All they have to do is get a 3.0 in high school, which is doable in a public school system. It's possible.
You sure?
Yeah. Depending on how many math classes you take. But no, it's possible.
Some people don't have to do anything. Some people just have to like wait for someone to die.
Some people just have to be born with a Bush name and they can get into Yale. So no, if we look at it that way, it's true. like there's systemic inequalities, and the thing about opportunities is that it always does have to do with your surroundings, and it has to do everything with education, because poverty is not a lack of money. Poverty is a lack of opportunity. All right. So yes, they need to, if it's so much harder for them to even like go out and get these things. Remember what I said about the Harvard, about how a black man got into Harvard in the early 1900s, which must have been like, if it's hard to get into Harvard now as anybody, imagine what kind of credentials he had. He probably had to cure some kind of cancer before he was even considered in. Maybe he cured athlete's foot or something like that. I don't know. But no, I'm serious. But he probably had to do something crazy to get in there, and they protested, and they got him kicked out. The white students protested and got that gentleman kicked out of Harvard. And that means that a Harvard degree is it brings a lot of security in, so that him and his whole generations live without the possibility of the security and the advancement, the job opportunities that he could have opened up for them. So if I'm 1 or 2 generations away from people who had found it very difficult to get ahead in life because of the socioeconomic opportunities they had, right? That makes it difficult for me as well, because I don't have the baseline of having a 2-parent home with over $100,000 of income, where I could go, where I can go to school and have after school care and make sure I have all these.
Okay, so I'm gonna stir the pot right now, like super hard. So if you're coming from 2 generations of people who found it hard to get ahead, these are the people who are teaching you and you're growing up with. Earlier you said opportunities is poverty, not financial status, correct?
Lack of opportunities.
Sorry, lack of opportunity is poverty, correct?
Yes.
Extremely successful people of all races and plenty of spiritual types of people would say poverty is a mindset and opportunities you create for yourself. So why do you think that you inherit opportunities?
I think it's obvious that people inherit opportunities. The grandson of the CEO of Johnson & Johnson.
Yeah, but there's plenty of people who don't inherit opportunities and they make them for themselves.
Okay.
I mean, I got 2 jobs recently because I reached out and emailed someone and did something. I didn't inherit anything.
That's true on an individual by individual basis, but if we look at it, we have to look at whole neighborhoods and whole communities of people, right? Because it takes a village to raise a child. And if the village itself is poorly funded, just has poor resources, no one around you has a college degree. Mm-hmm. No one, faith needs a picture. Okay? So if nobody who looks like you is out there killing it, doing things, advancing themselves, if you don't see people who look like you on TV, either winning championships, being senators, being political leaders, being high-profile lawyers, 95% of prosecutors are white. Sorry, but I digress. But it's just that you need to have, as a child growing up, you need to know and have a sense of what is possible for you, and that just seeing someone who looks like you. When I was growing up, one thing that did affect me was I noticed that in all the superhero groups I like, the leader was always a handsome white male, right? So as a person of color, you grow up and you kind of, in a way, I think it indoctrinates you and kind of teaches you, the white, that you're gonna take orders from a white man one day, or that white people are naturally more inclined to leadership than you.
Now we have Luke Cage and Obama.
Yeah,
well, I mean, Luke Cage has been around,
and that is very important. Honestly, that you won't believe how important that is, to a child, because
I'm sure it is. I'm not saying that it isn't. Again, a lot of these things are coming out of we don't have anyone opposing, so I'm trying.
Yeah, no, I understand, but I promise you, I think in the 5th grade, somebody asked me what I want to be when I grow up, and I said white, joking around.
I remember seeing this comic before that put things into perspective for me. It's floating all over the internet and stuff. Anyway, it's this black dude, and he's shackled up, and then there's this high, I guess a shelf that this white guy wants to get up to, and he's telling the black dude, this is for your own good, that he's all shackled up, and he's using the black dude to prop himself up and climb up onto the shelf. he's like stepping on him and everything to get on top of the shelf. And then the black dude is like, enough is enough. I'm getting up. And then the white guy says, I'm really sorry about being racist before. I know better now. And the black guy says, awesome. Can you give me a hand to get up there? And the white guy goes, of course not. That would be reverse racism. And he says, look, if I got up here by myself, why can't you? And yeah, so that
that's a great story.
Yeah, that's a good story.
And that kind of put it into perspective for me, like what it looks like.
Overall, the past is kind of a tricky subject. I think when looking back, it's hard to look forward because you're so focused, but it is important to learn from the lessons and the mistakes that we make. Life should be a trial and error process, and one in which we're not scared to fail. And part of failing is learning, and learning leads to wisdom through experience. So overall, I think if we've learned anything over the past couple decades, it's that exclusion, whether it's due to beliefs or a specific race or anything along those lines, just doesn't work. It's unhelpful towards a progressive future. Everything that we see that has to do with exclusion just holds us as a country, as a world back. So I think if we've learned anything from the past, it's that exclusion doesn't work and inclusion needs to be the way that we do things. And there's a way to include people within different belief systems and within different races, because at the end of the day, there are always similarities and common goals. And if we focus on those similarities, we focus on the common, then inclusion will be a lot more possible.
I have a question. Our current president right now, do you think his status and his race has made a significant mark on history for the Black community? And with that, do you think that it will continue to grow from where it is right now, or the opposite?
I say yes and yes. And I think even if he, because some argue he's done nothing for the Black community, that's neither here nor there. The fact that he is Black and he is our president, and it's taken this long to get there. The fact that what Gabriel was saying, that growing up as a Black kid and not having anyone in that position of power that looks like you, that's a game changer, I think, for the next generation. And I do think that we're gonna continue. We have a woman now running, and who knows? I mean, whatever. Who cares about her? I'm just saying there's a woman now, like the Black guy, woman, Muslim, like who knows what's gonna happen next? And I think that is what our country was supposed to be to begin with. It was supposed to be that. It was supposed to be this place of freedom, of this place of doesn't matter who you are, everyone has that opportunity, and that our country preached that like crazy. And I think it hasn't come to fruition until now, where it's finally starting to show.
Yeah, and you know what? A lot of people who know me on a surface level, because of the way I lean towards thinking, is pessimist or realist. At the end of the day, I'm kind of an optimist, because I think that what you're saying is true, and I think that we are headed in that direction. We're not there yet. We probably won't be fully there in our lifetime, but got a Black president, possibly a female president. Regardless of whether either of them were ever qualified or not, it gives that image that Gabriel was talking about for young people to say, hey, for a minority to say now, hey, I can be president. It's not like this crazy, impossible thing.
Exactly.
And for a woman to be able to say, no, I can be a president.
Because before, if you're told that, it's like, oh, that sounds like a nice thing. But you don't even see it. It's such a crazy concept because it never happened. It never happened. And that is now eliminated for the next generation.
And I also don't personally, not speaking for everyone else, want to make presidency seem like some great thing, because I don't personally think that it necessarily is. But being on that pedestal, if everyone is on that pedestal, it then levels the playing field, saying we can all be these great things.
I personally feel that Obama, his contribution to the Black community could have been so much better. And I think that...
I think a lot of Black people feel that way.
Yes. Things that he honestly, even though he does help like little boys and girls have kind of feel like the ceiling has been raised for them which is very important. He hasn't really passed any laws that help black people, that help with mass incarceration. One thing that is happening is that
Actually, heard just recently
all
though,
private prisons are closing.
that he's the first president to visit. What would you learn
To actually
earlier?
visit a prison.
He's the first president in office to
Like, to
actually
go
visit.
in.
Yes.
Go
And
in.
speak
Yeah,
to the-
and one thing he did was that he took
Well, you
so
have
he
to
took
remember.
solitary confinement out of juvenile delinquency system, which is a good thing.
Yeah.
But he's passed laws to help Latinos, he's passed laws to help women, he's passed laws to help gays, but he hasn't passed a single law to help African Americans.
Because you have to think about the situation that he's under and what's right now. I'm not giving an excuse, but he is a black male who's made it essentially to the top of the American pyramid, right?
That's a congressman.
He is in a system that has literally established itself to tear down the quote unquote lesser man, the man that was just decades ago not even considered fully man. So even though he is president, does not dictate that he has sole advantages, can create any sort of policies that he sees fit, because it's still a checks and balances sort of system. I understand what he's saying, and he has not. But there are individuals that, not because of his standing and his accomplishments in the past as a civil rights attorney, as head of the Harvard Law Review, or anything like that, not because of his standing and where he came from, solely voted for him because of his race. Just like right now with the new presidential debate that we have going on with Hillary and Trump, there are countless people voting for Hillary, not because of where she has stood or where she stands, but because she is a woman. Do you guys see a problem with that behavior? Because it ties into race being the pivotal deciding factor for certain individuals and not the certain accomplishments of the person, if that makes any sense.
Yes, and I think it is a problem, and the same I think can be said for people that are gonna vote for Trump because he's
not
a white
poli-
man.
But also because he's not a politician.
Yes, and
Or-
because he's not
A Muslim.
the minority.
No, I'm kidding.
And that's a problem. But like, what can you do about that? People are gonna.
Education. That's what you can do about it.
Because then with those certain situations, if you want to break barriers or break down walls and stop people from making decisions solely based on race, yet you do it in turn for something like this, I see almost no, like, it's just the same sort of ignorance, if that makes any sense.
Well, yeah, because
It's
it goes
reverse racism.
it goes towards what Jason was saying, that it's education. Because how many people are actually looking into the candidates and like their accomplishments and what they can bring to the table? And
Frustrated people are doing it.
where the majority are just like, well, she's a woman. Like I can. That's something I can easily take in and understand and get behind. That's all they have, because it's all that's easily available for them to understand.
My initial response to the word racism is nervousness or fear. I think that when you bring up that conversation, it's just such a heavy topic, and sometimes it's hard to deal with. It's hard to open your mind and open your heart and listen to what people are experiencing, and sometimes that brings out the worst in people. So when I hear somebody start talking about racism, I'm always a little nervous because I never know where it's going to go. You're either going to hear somebody that you've known forever say something that's so racist that you can't handle it, or you're going to hear deniers that say it doesn't exist anymore. So there's people that are authentically going through this and want to bring up the conversation, want to talk about it, but at the same time, there's people that are pushing it away and, oh, let's just not talk about it because it's hard. So my initial response would be nervousness.
I wanted to really quickly mention what Gabriel said about Barack Obama and like what he's done for the black community. Like I literally just looked it up because I was curious, because I've heard a lot, and I honestly haven't even done my own research. But what I do know is that he has backed BLM, Black Lives Matter, publicly. He has said it, whatever. He's backed that. And I've heard him talk about it, but he's talked about the black community and all of that, obviously. But what you were saying, like, he hasn't passed laws for black people. So basically what he has done is uplift people who have been considered lesser than or poor or low
Second
income.
rate.
Exactly. So it hasn't been directly to the black community, but it has been for people who might not have the same opportunities as somebody from middle or upper class. So like tax cuts and making college more accessible and affordable and things like that don't directly affect black people, but it does.
Okay, I mean, I could see your point, but I would rather him have some kind of laws that help us have more responsible and accountable policing, and something that helps combat the industrialized prison complex. One thing that has been passed, I'm not sure if it was by him, but all private prisons will be closing down within a year or two. That's the one.
I mean,
good thing
some would argue that nothing is from him anyway, because he's the president. He's a puppet. But just saying.
Yeah. My closing statements, I just want to say that really the bridge to reverse systemic racism is education and empathy. And the thing is that the gentleman by the name of James Baldwin said to be a conscious black man in America is to be in a constant rage. It's to be basically angry all the time. So it's funny because like the more you go into the history of how blacks are treated in America, you may get offended, but that's a good thing. I definitely recommend everybody really try to empathize with that, with any disenfranchised groups of people, and try to empathize with them and see, try to see where they're coming from before you make any judgments about their methods of gaining progress socioeconomically and otherwise.
I definitely agree with that. I would say empathy is key. Trying to understand what other people are going through and what they're feeling and how you're affecting them is definitely part of like raising each other up. And if you can't do that, then pretty much you only see yourself and you're being selfish.
I just wanted to say how I think this is a really, it's not the prettiest thing that's happening right now as far as race and everything, but I do like how things are getting stirred up and people aren't just being passive and docile. The fact that we're even talking about this right now is, I think, a big deal within itself. This wouldn't have happened, even us having this conversation, or even us being the different races and whatever, having this conversation in the first place. I just think it's a good thing. It's a good thing for the human race as a whole.
I don't feel qualified or educated enough to make my own statement. So I'm going to end with 4 statements. They're very short from black men that were around in the civil rights movement. They're statements that I agree with. Malcolm X said 2 things I really like. You can't separate peace from freedom because no one can be at peace unless he has freedom. The other thing he said is you're not to be so blind with patriotism that you can't face reality. Wrong is wrong no matter who does it or who says it in regards to laws against.
That's a really good one.
Really like that. And then one of my favorite of all time, MLK Jr. Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. We must learn to live together as brothers or perish together as fools. And I have decided to stick with love. Hate is too great a burden to bear.
It's the real MVP.
There is no when or was. There only is now. Now is all that you have. It's all that we actually possess. We're no longer promised when, nor can we hold on to what was. All you have right now is now. So strive to make a change. Stand. Don't lay idle to the things that are happening around you, and don't be blind to the things that are happening around you. Be aware, like we've said, educate yourself, and don't allow what's occurred in the past to be a crutch for you or an excuse for you. Do what you need to do for the betterment of mankind.
All right, let's do recommendations. I'll go first. My recommendation is going to be, once again, a book, and it does deal with some race stuff. Gabriel. Why? Books again, so boring.
Yo, you should recommend audiobooks. People don't have that much time anymore.
They might be able to get these books on audiobooks. I don't know.
You could sit
If you
down
don't take
and
the
read.
time to educate yourself, then when's it
Yeah,
gonna
exactly.
You need to listen to it during drives and
No, you need to listen to this podcast during drives.
Yeah.
Anyways, my book. My book recommendation is going to be another poetry book. It's called The Outlaw Bible of American Poetry. And in it has tons of race stuff because it's over time from then till now. It's really great. I mean, it's got anti-Semite racism, black racism, all the racisms it has in it.
All the racisms.
It's very
All
good.
the racisms for one price.
It's a huge book, though. So,
Liquidation.
Kyle.
Everything must go.
Everyone must go.
It's Kyle's turn.
I saw this shirt at Halloween Horror Nights. It had like Jason on it, and it said "No Lives Matter."
Yeah.
I liked it. Not this Jason. Jason, the serial killer. Not this serial killer, Jason. The OG.
The famous one.
Okay, that's not my recommendation though. So my recommendation is a group called Johnnyswim. They just came out with an album called Georgia Pond. They're a duo. It's a husband and wife.
Oh.
And they have like a really nice bluesy sound. They have this nice mix of the guy's voice is he has a nice rasp and it's like a strong bluesy kind of voice, and then she has this melodic tone to it, and they harmonize so well together, and they have some sad stuff, they got some happy stuff, and I listened to it and it's great, and you should listen to it too. Check it out.
All right, I'd like to recommend something a little specific, but it will definitely bring up your social profile and include improve the quality of your life.
I feel like our suggestions might coincide right now.
I highly doubt it. Mine is not chocolate milk related whatsoever.
That's impossible.
Okay. And if you get us down to our molecular, like we're just chocolate milk,
Yeah.
orbiting amongst neutrons and protons.
You're making me cry, dude.
All right, but all right. What I'm suggesting that will immediately shut your filthy mouth, Kyle. Shut your fat mouth. All right. All right. What I'm suggesting that will improve your social and profile and your quality of life. You need to buy a pinky ring that is also big enough for your ring finger. Okay, so that. If you're in a place where people will think you're obnoxious for having a pinky ring and they're not as inclusive and educated, all right, you can just slide it into your ring finger, and then you're fine. Yeah, but when you're in places where people are more accepting of who you really are, you can just wear it as a pinky ring, and just be like the coolest guy there.
And how else do you stir chocolate milk but with pinky up?
You know what I usually do? I usually just pour milk into my mouth and then take a spoonful of the Nesquik and then pour it and just mix it all in.
And then you do jumping jacks.
No, I gargle it. That sounds so. That's so. Wow, so gay.
That's sacrilege.
I'm sorry.
Sacrilege.
Yeah, that's what I would recommend for you, all our sexy listeners.
You have such a great delivery.
Me,
Ralph.
Was that I?
My suggestion is go to like CVS or something, and you like get some like cough syrup, because I mean,
does this require clothes?
Does it require clothes? Does anything require clothes?
No.
So true.
Damn. Stay woke.
Your clothing is a social construct.
So yeah, you go out, you get yourself some cough syrup, because I mean, you need that your cough suppressed, especially if you're gonna enjoy some chocolate milk, because you don't want any like bubbles getting in the way.
Especially if you're gonna be on a podcast.
Yeah, especially on a podcast, but more for the chocolate milk.
I have bronchitis, guys.
Do you really? That breathing. Ashley, recommendation?
My recommendation is, if you heard something on this podcast episode today that you're not aware of, or that you have no knowledge of, that's the same thing. If you have no knowledge of, then dive into it, do your research, and just don't stand blind or deaf or...
Chocolate milkless.
You're saying don't be Helen Keller.
That's not what I'm saying.
And end episode.
Ebony and ivory.
Together in perfect harmony.
Got
I
him.
think he's actually going to use that.
these streets of gold that lead to you. And touching love is touching God. No wonder I'm in heaven when I'm holding you. Simple as a song, a melody repeating in this heart. I don't know when the chorus came or where I heard it first. When it started, I won't be holding my breath for chariots. I'm not just waiting for skies to part. You've been my glimpse of kingdom right from the start. And you got me touching heaven. Got me touching heaven.
So tell me what you're dreaming. Tell me what it is. Your dream come true. I don't need a map to find a hidden treasure there. Ain't no hiding you.
I won't be holding my breath for chariots. I'm not just waiting for skies to part. You've been my glimpse of kingdom right from the start. And you got me touching heaven. Ooh, you got me touching heaven. You're my hallelujah. You're my hallelujah. You're my hallelujah. You're my hallelujah. Yes, you are. Hallelujah. You're my hallelujah. You're my hallelujah. Hallelujah. You're my hallelujah. You're my hallelujah. 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 You're my hallelujah. Oh, you're my hallelujah.
Yeah.
And you got me touching heaven. Ooh, got me touching heaven. Ooh, got me touching heaven.
You got me
Touching heaven. Touching heaven. You're touching love, it's touching God. No wonder I'm in heaven when I'm holding you.
Was that better?
It felt a little better. I didn't burp this time.